Hello. I want to talk about a subject that I care very much about. I've had personal experience of it, but so it's many people. It's nothing unique for me. That's bullying. Um, and I want to talk particularly, bullying takes many forms. I want to talk about a particularly vicious sort of bullying, which is a worldwide phenomenon, unfortunately. Um, and that is gang bullying in schools. That's the way I'll describe it. What I mean by that is not necessarily organized gangs, known criminal gangs. I'm not talking about that. Although no doubt there are bullies as well. What I'm talking about here is a very vicious sort of bullying that really, really does need to be dealt with. I'm talking about groups of girls or boys finding a classmate for whatever reason, targeting them, and doing what they can to humiliate that person, and hurt them physically and emotionally, of course, with goes without saying. Um, Now, there's a few of these, quite a few of these videos online. I've seen a few tonight, which made very unpleasant viewing, but I felt I had to see a few of them to give a context to what I'm talking about here. One of them was in Russia. It showed a girl, young girl, let's say 13, something like that. Um, and the bullies surround her and make her drink muddy water. This looks like a rural area. Um, Supposedly the backstory is that she's being punished for being pretty, and one of the other girls took exception to the fact that her boyfriend was staring at this girl, as if that was her fault. Um, in another video, which became very notorious, I haven't actually seen the video directly, but four boys um, hospitalized, a fifth, um, in China by beating him up with stones and all sorts of things. And I've seen two more, both involving girls. One of them was, oh, well, actually, they were pretty similar, but they were different videos because they were different places. One was Jiangxi, and the other was somewhere in southern China, but I'm not sure where. Um, but this is something that isn't, I don't think it's a geographical phenomenon because I've heard of similar things in my country. It was very hard to watch this. Now, the one I've just watched actually did speak about quite recently. This was the Jiangxi incident. Trying not to speak too loudly because, like I said, there's people sleeping next door. Um, we have guests at the moment. But anyway, this Jiangxi incident was a large group of girls, more than I initially thought, actually. I thought it was three or four initially, but it was up to seven, I think, in the video. And basically, the video's in Chinese, but you don't need a translation to see what's going on here. Girl is on her knees. This is a rooftop. I believe it's a rooftop of the school building. The other girls had challenged her to a fight, and anyway, for whatever reason, she ended up there. I don't know if they were picking on her because she was class monitor or whatever it is, but anyway, it ends up she's on her knees, and these girls, and it is all girls, repeatedly slap her hard, very hard, kick her over and over and over again. This goes on for about 10 minutes, just relentless slapping and kicking, and interspersed with standing above her, shouting at her, this sort of thing. The girl is clearly, traumatized. She's crying. She's begging for them to stop. And these despicable bullies are just standing around, acting like it's a normal thing. Um, it's very disturbing. And then afterwards, the video doesn't show it for obvious reasons because this is a censored version. They strip her, and then they post that online, and it's went viral across China. We're talking here about teenage girls. Not sure the exact age they are, but teenage girls. The thing is, right, and I think there's a few important points to make with this. We sort of have this caricature image of police, which is kind of, if you live in the UK, it's something along the lines of a Dennis the Menace type figure that is, a tough kid, usually looking like a pit bull terrier, just looking like a tough kid. These girls, and this is what I find particularly disturbing about it, if you didn't see them in this video, you would just think they're very normal, sweet and innocent Chinese teenage girls. There's nothing about them that would make them look like they would be violent people or anything like that. And I find that aspect particularly disturbing. That they could be capable of such viciousness and cruelty. Anyway, this is a debate in China about the current laws for dealing with this. Apparently, the outcome of this was that the girl was taken to hospital by her teachers because this was a sustained attack. Um, and the teachers passed on the video to the police. The police, whether it was the fact that they were restrained by current laws or whether they just took it upon themselves, came out with the notion that the girls should just apologize to her, right? Apologize, like that magic word would change anything, and it would be a meaningless apology. That's quite obvious. These girls had no sense of remorse whatsoever. There wasn't a single one of them trying to hold back and saying it went too far or stop or whatever. They were just utterly, utterly, utterly devoid of any sense of reason or compassion whatsoever, and it's thoroughly disgusting. And I have to say, seeing that sort of stuff makes my blood boil. But in some ways, I mean, bullying occurs in the adult world as well, and it's still bad. It can still lead to depression and suicide. But at least within the adult world, adults can stick up for other adults in the sense that there's legal protection for adults defending other adults. But this is where it gets complicated when minors are involved. Um, the law in China sounds quite similar to the law in the UK regarding juvenile offences, in the sense that I'm not saying it's the same, I'm just saying it sounds somewhat similar. Since 1991, the child protection law has been used to defend parents abusing their children. That's obviously a good thing because that's a very big problem in China. Parents brutalizing, like really beating badly children who are badly behaved in other ways. Like I've heard of kids stealing money and stuff, and their parents thrashing them to within an inch of their life. So the law was designed to protect children in those sort of cases. Unfortunately, that law is also being used to create a situation where if bullies are between the ages of 14 and 16, if they're under 14, they're held criminally liable. If they're between the ages of 14 and 16, they only go into incarceration for serious crimes like rape, murder, and arson. So under current legislation, what happened in that video would not be classed as a serious crime, which I think is terrible. And this isn't even about China because it's exactly the same situation here and in other parts of the world. Um, I'm not sure if there's any country in the world actually that has a law that punishes school bullies for actually that. There's plenty of laws that punish, assault and other serious crimes, but there's no specific laws that I can think of anywhere in the world that specifically target the issue of bullying, and I think there needs to be. Um, Firstly, there needs to be a review as to how these laws concerning child protection are used. Clearly, they have a purpose for adults who abuse their children, but in situations where young people, children, are abusing each other, there needs to be a situation whereby justice can be brought about. So I think there probably needs to be reform of these laws. And I'm extending this to other countries as well. Um, Apart from bullying itself, the other thing that makes my blood boil is adults who try to rationalize that you can compromise with this, that you can show them a bit of love and they'll change and this sort of thing. I take a very black, white, and white view on this. Something like this, the only moral approach is severe punishment. It's the only moral approach, because anything else, if that's true that the authorities just made the girls apologize, it's utterly meaningless, utterly meaningless, because she's going to be traumatized for years to come because of that. It also, by the way, drops on its head this notion that you can just ignore bullies or defend yourself. That's a lot of people who pontificate about this don't really have a clue what they're talking about. Even if that girl wanted to, she was surrounded. And the thing that's most despicable about bullies is they always work in gangs. Um, it's another stereotype very often. There's an American TV series called Bully Beatdown. The whole idea is about an MMA fighter kind of taking on um, bullies, but I think it's set up because in most cases the bullies are individuals. Not in the real world, bullies work in gangs like this, and the carnage that they show is utterly despicable. And I find it hard to comprehend how anyone could be this cruel. I mean, I believe it. I'm not saying I don't. When I say I can't comprehend it, maybe what I'm trying to say is I can't accept it. What should be the right approach in terms of punishment? I believe the only way a bully changes is by understanding, really understanding what they've put their victim through, by getting some sort of tapping into them, some sort of notion of empathy. The only way to reach that is by making them go through the same experience. Now, I'm not saying that each of those bullies, those girls, should be brought up to a rooftop and the same thing happened to them. That would just be revenge. But justice to me would be as follows. This is what I would do if I was the judge. If a case like this was brought before me, this is what I would do. I would order that each of the girls was forced to wear a sign all day reading, "I am a card. I am a card. I am a despicable bully. I work in a gang to attack an individual. I am wearing this because I have to understand how it feels." And they would be forced to wear it all day. That should be followed by a lengthy period in custody. Um, and that custody should be controlled. It should be a controlled setting in terms of their education. Let them continue. Um, give them education in this custody. I'm not calling for an adult prison. I'm not calling for a brutal prison, but I am calling for a situation whereby they will have to make serious sacrifices. And within that, there should be a curriculum forcing them to watch their own video over and over and over and over again until they understand, until they are forced to understand what it feels like. And only when they come out with their tail between their legs, begging for forgiveness from their victim, then that would be the correct approach. This idea that the way to deal with bullies is just to compromise. And another thing that I think is perverse is this notion of negotiations, like getting the victim at a table with their bullies and, oh, we'll all talk it out. The problem with that is it's putting the bullies on an equilibrium with the victim, as if almost saying the victim is partly to blame. It's not conflict, okay? It is not a conflict. And I hate when I see videos entitled like fight when it's nothing of the sort, it's an assault. A fight is two people fighting in a 50-50 way. This isn't fighting. This is a prolonged assault. Um, some people may think that punishment I propose is harsh, but I'm not calling for their development to be altered. They would still get education, but I am calling for a worldwide change reform in how this is dealt with, because this is a worldwide problem. And the number of young lives it's destroyed, which then goes into adulthood, is vast. And it's very difficult for adults. As a teacher, in that situation, I would be tempted to run in there yelling at those girls. But of course, as a teacher, I wouldn't have the power to be able to physically hurt them. Um, in the case of those girls, I don't necessarily want to do that, but I would want to scare them. I would want to make them know what they put the victim through. Um, when I say I want to scare them, what I'm getting at is I do believe that only by scaring bullies do they change. They need to be polarized. They need to be made to really understand this namby-pamby approach of softly, softly. It's ludicrous, utterly ludicrous. Um, in the UK, we have a philosophy now of kind of no blame policy when it comes to bullying. I cannot tell you how much that is beyond crap. Bullies are first and foremost to blame for bullying. Simple as that. Just as criminals are first and foremost to blame for crime. You cannot provide excuses for them. And adults who do that, as far as I'm concerned, are complicit. They're complicit in it. Because they're teaching the bullies that what they're doing is okay. And I think it is, I mean, the bullies are cards, but it's also cowardly of adults to be in a position to do something and just not do it. And it enrages me, quite frankly. So I do think that corporal punishment should be enabled for situations like this. I don't mean it should be used casually, but for extreme cases, i.e. like this, I do believe in corporal punishment. Um, and that's not something I say lightly. I'll put a link to the video, but I will warn you it's pretty disturbing. And I'm sure it isn't even the worst out there, but it's pretty disturbing. To those people who think that there should be a compromise situation, I would say, what if that girl was your daughter? Would you still be calling for a compromise with the bullies? The only language that bullies understand is force. It's the only language they understand. So the only way to approach them is with force. I'm not talking about physical violence. Let me be clear about that. I am not talking about physical violence, but I'm talking about the force of justice. I am talking about putting them through the same fear that they put their victim through, making them understand what it's like. Another approach could be put them in a dark room by themselves, in handcuffs, and force them to watch that video over and over and over and over again. I'm deadly serious here. I do think there needs to be radical steps. Of course, it would be controversial. Of course, the usual crowd would come out and talk about how we need to understand the bullies and all this sort of crap. No, no.